Don Rita spoke to you earlier today about some of the things you will learn in this course and how they will help you to give powerful presentations. When you give a speech or seminar, the success or failure of a speech often depends upon the introduction. As well as giving speeches, you'll sometimes also be required to act as MC and introduce other speakers. The importance of introductions cannot be overstated. In this presentation, Don Rita will explain why introductions are so important, and by the completion of the activity which follows this presentation, you'll be well on the way to being able to create introductions that help empower the speaker and can prepare the audience. I present to you Don Rita Riefman, the beginning of the beginning.
Some time ago, I was on a holiday visiting some friends in the UK. And while I was there, unfortunately, as a result of carrying some very heavy luggage up some stairs, I found myself with sciatica. I was completely unable to move, in terrible, terrible pain, and certainly it was spoiling my holiday. My friends got out the telephone directory and we started to look to see if we could find a local osteopath. There were so many entries for osteopaths in the area, I honestly didn't know where to start, and quite frankly, I didn't want to allow my body to be beaten around by somebody I had no recommendation for. So my friends I was staying with had a good idea. They knew that the neighbour next door had been to an osteopath sometime recently, and they contacted them and said, "Can you recommend who was a good osteopath to go to?" Sure enough, there was one just in the same street, just a short walk away. I rang them up, I had my appointment, osteopaths did their work, and within a couple of days I was walking, and by the end of the week, no trouble for getting on that plane for my flight home. The reason I'm telling you this story is because the recommendation of other people is far more effective and far more credible than a recommendation they could give of themselves. You can promote anyone or anything but yourself. If an osteopath puts an advertisement for themselves in the telephone directory or in the newspaper, that is a recommendation they're making by themselves and of themselves. But the recommendation given by somebody else, the next door neighbour in this case, was far more effective and far more credible. And therefore, allowing somebody else to give an introduction of you is giving the first impression of you to your audience. And this is what I'd like to speak about now, the beginning of your speech or presentation. There are two very important elements to a successful introduction: the messenger and the message. And the two must be linked for the success of the introduction. An inaccurate or an awkward introduction can ruin the best speech, but a good introduction can enhance a speech by providing a smooth transition for the speaker to move smoothly into the presentation, by setting the mood for the audience, creating a sense of anticipation amongst the audience members, and by establishing the credibility of the speaker and their expertise and knowledge about their topic. When you are the MC, you are the one who introduces the speaker. And then your primary responsibility is to make the speakers feel comfortable so that they can perform at their very best. To create an atmosphere of excitement and anticipation, encouraging the audience to be expectant and attentive to the speakers. To lead the applause. Yes, that's the job of the MC. To lead the applause after each presentation and also as you introduce the speaker, and then taking control of the lectern or the space where the speech happens as you offer perhaps a brief word of appreciation and bridge the gap between two speakers or between the speaker and the next thing that's going to happen, maintaining the interest of the audience. As MC or chairperson, it is your responsibility to ensure that every introduction includes three things. Firstly, the background of the speaker. Who are they? What have they done? Why is this person the best speaker to speak about this topic to this audience right now? Secondly, what are the speaker's interests? Why are they going to be interesting to the audience to listen to? What will they say that the audience might find interesting? And thirdly, very importantly, the speaker's name and how to pronounce it. If your speaker has a difficult to pronounce name, write it down phonetically or in some way that you will be able to pronounce it accurately, and say it back to the speaker beforehand to make sure you've got it right. And of course you will also say the title of the speaker's speech as part of your introduction, and both the speaker's name and their speech title you must say several times and highlight them as part of the introducing process. Here are some things not to do. First of all, never upstage the speaker. Don't tell unrelated jokes or stories that distract from the speech. Your job is to graciously introduce the speaker and not to show off yourself. Don't try to steal the speaker's thunder. Introduce the speaker, but don't try to summarise what they're about to say. Don't surprise the speaker with additional information that could perhaps even embarrass them. There was once a speaker who prepared properly their own introduction, which was less than a minute long, and handed it to the MC, who then took it and turned it into a 28-minute introduction, by the end of which 75% of the audience had already left. Don't praise the speaker's skill either. Don't say something like, "Here we have the funniest person in the world." No, let the audience decide for themselves whether or not this speech is going to be funny or in fact good at all. Your job is to praise the speaker's background and authority on the topic. And don't use cliches. Cliches are overused and are boring. So don't say things like, "We have with us tonight," or "Without further ado," or "It gives me great pleasure to present," or worst of all, "This speaker needs no introduction." Every speaker needs a good introduction. Keep it simple, not smart. Just say something simply like, "Please help me welcome," and then leave the applause. As MC, you need to learn some certain points of etiquette. Deliver the introduction to the audience, not to the speaker. For example, don't say, "And please welcome Mr. Tom Jones." No, rather, "Please welcome Mr. Tom Jones." And then at the end, you turn towards the speaker as you leave the applause. Shake the speaker's hand as they come towards you, like this. Noticed how I went behind the speaker has to come forward. And then at the end of the speech, you shake hands again, and this time you're going to be taking up your position at the lectern and the speaker leaves behind you. If you remain in view of the audience during the speech, you of course should show interest to the content of the speech and to the speaker throughout the whole speech. Once the speech is over, add about 30 seconds or less of comments, perhaps how the speech entertained or helped or enlightened the audience, and then show your thanks and appreciation to finish up. When you stand before an audience to give your speech, you are the main attraction, the star of the show, and you deserve the audience's full attention. But who is going to draw their attention to you? I cannot overstate the importance of writing your own introductions which you will give to the MC to use in introducing you. The introduction is also a handy place to let the audience know in advance where you stand on the particular topic you're about to speak about. I once gave a speech about public funding for education, and I didn't want to spend time in the speech itself telling the audience whether I was for or against funding for private and state schools. And so, in my introduction that I wrote for the MC, I just put that in and told the audience where I stood on the topic, and then I could get on with the bulk of my speech. It can save you a lot of time. Don't entrust your speech introduction to anyone else. Write it yourself. A good introduction is a two-way effort between the speaker and the introducer. As a speaker, you have the responsibility to ensure that your introducer knows what you want to be said. To make sure about this, I always email a copy of my introduction to the MC in advance. And then I bring along a hard copy as well, just in case it's been lost or he's forgotten it, or perhaps the email didn't get through at all. I have included as an example for you the introduction that I wrote myself for my Don't Waste Your Message speech that you've already seen. Your introduction is the audience's first impression of you, and you don't get a second chance to make that first impression. It is the beginning of your speech, in which you give your background. You can list your relevant, outstanding achievements without sounding arrogant. You establish your credibility for this topic and for this audience, through which you can bond yourself to the audience through your past experiences. Your introduction provides a smooth transition for you to get into your speech, explaining a little bit about what you're going to tell the audience. The first 30 seconds or 90 words of your speech are critical ones. You want to be able to grab the audience's attention and make them want to listen to you. And that's why a poor introduction can ruin the most dramatic opening, especially if there's a time constraint. William Jennings Bryan was an American public speaker. During one engagement, the MC introducing him went on for such a long time that finally, when he said, "And now Mr. Bryan will give us his address," William Jennings Bryan stepped up to the podium and said, "My address is 3 Hampton Street." And then he left and went and caught his train. Don't let that sort of thing happen to you. To make it easier for the person introducing you, always ensure that they know the housekeeping details have to be complete first. You don't want to have this marvellous introduction that you've prepared delivered to the audience, and now we welcome this wonderful speaker. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to add, the restrooms are over in that direction. That would steal your thunder. Always provide a typed 14 to 16 font, double-spaced, written-out introduction on a hard copy. And as I said before, if you can email it to them in advance, that's all the better for your MC to do a great job of introducing you. Include not only what you want read, but also any other instructions. Just make sure that any instructions, however, are in a different font so they don't accidentally get read out too. For example, this speaker is the author of 3 books. You want them to hold up 3 books. Put it in brackets so they don't read out, hold up 3 books. Advise the introducer of any special considerations. For example, whether you want the lectern or not. If you'd like the lectern removed, make sure the MC has done this before introducing you. Whether or not you might be having a question and answer section at the end of your speech, the MC needs to inform the audience, and so you need to inform the MC of that too. In this course, you will be giving several presentations, and for every speech, you will be expected to write your own introduction of yourself, the messenger, and your speech, the message. In Module 4, you will be giving the first of these prepared speeches. I'm now going to help you to write the introduction for that Module 4 first prepared speech. And we're going to do this by first preparing what we call a speaker's CV. The speaker's CV can be found in Module 3 in the course materials. Begin by brainstorming. What would a particular audience want to know and hear about you? Why are you the expert on this topic? So come up with some personal facts about you which are relevant to this particular audience and this particular speech. What contributions are you as a speaker going to make to your audience's sphere of interest? Once you've got a list of all the possible things that you might say about yourself for speeches ahead, then prioritise the things that you've brainstormed. Review and sort your list into 3 categories. Firstly, things that must be mentioned in every introduction. For example, your name. Secondly, things that could be mentioned if time allows. And thirdly, things that would only be mentioned to a particular group. For example, the fact that I am a homeschooling mum would really not be relevant to you, but it might be relevant if I was giving a presentation at a homeschoolers conference. Once you've done this, you have a resource that you can go to every time you need to write a self-introduction. And then you're ready to actually write your introduction. It must establish your key credentials, your accomplishments, and your credibility. Remember, KISS. Keep it short and simple. 3 paragraphs. 30 to 45 seconds, no more. You don't want it to steal the thunder of your actual speech. In the first paragraph, you sell yourself. You grab the attention of the audience, or at least the MC will do that for you. The second paragraph establishes your credibility, your accomplishments, and your recognitions. The third paragraph is a call to action, inviting the audience to welcome you. For example, please help me to welcome, or let's give a warm welcome to. Remember, avoid the cliches. The end result of all this will be your self-introduction that you have written and hand to your student partner to introduce you in your Module 4 first speech, Why Am I Here?